So, a few months ago, I bought this book called Overcharged, which is about why why healthcare and health insurance in America are so expensive. And someone actually recommended that I buy another book called Catastrophic Care. And I just bought that book last week, and I've been reading bits and pieces from both, but it's really interesting how government intervention in the healthcare and health insurance industries is largely responsible for the outrageous costs in healthcare. In Overcharged, they spend an entire chapter talking about how FDA policy has resulted in skyrocketing drug costs because the FDA keeps creating these monopolies. As I said, monopolies are only possible through government favors and intervention in the market. And you look at the policy of the FDA, this alleged consumer protection agency. Seriously, it's blasphemous to even criticize the FDA or suggest reform. Because, hey, they're a consumer protection agency. If we mess with the FDA, sooner or later, drug companies, they're going to cut corners, food companies will cut corners, and it will be a total catastrophe. It'll be a total nightmare. You can't touch the FDA. They're a consumer protection agency. So, here's one case of the FDA. Ever since the beginning of America, there was this medication for gout called, I think it's pronounced colchicine. I'm not sure how it's exactly pronounced. But this medicine dates back to ancient Greece. Grand opening of Bowser's Zoo. Let's check this out. And Benjamin Franklin used it. He would bring it over from France. And for centuries in America, anyone was allowed to create this medicine for gout. And it was grandfathered out of FDA regulation. Because, hey, everyone was already making it. And as a result of competition in the marketplace, the cost for it was pretty low. It was pretty reasonable because anyone and everyone can make it. But in 2005, the FDA decided that, we need to put an end to all these unregulated drugs. This is insane. Everyone's making all these drugs and medicine without any government regulation or oversight. So what happened is they allowed a pharmaceutical company, I can't remember which one, to test it, which isn't hard because everyone knew that that colchicine was effective in treating gout. They ran the studies, they showed the tests, they proved everything, and the FDA granted them a patent to exclusively produce a medication that had been on the market for centuries. And right after this happened, I think the cost for colchicine, the price for it, increased by 5,000%. Now, I'm not anti-intellectual property, and it's really hard to tell what the author's view of intellectual property is. I don't know what the proper policy for issuing patents should be, but it definitely should not be that. Consumer protection, creating monopolies, and causing the price and cost of drugs to skyrocket. Another case was asthma medication. So there was this asthma medication called albuterol. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of these medications. Besides the point, you guys know what I mean. But so for decades in America, people were producing this medication, and it was being dispensed by chlorofluorocarbon inhalers, CHC inhalers, CFC inhalers, chlorofluorocarbon inhalers. And there were a lot of generic competitors on the market. And I think the average cost at one point was $15 for one inhaler. But then it was reported that these inhalers were doing damage to the ozone layer. Oh no, guys. Medication is doing damage to the ozone layer. We can't have any of that going on. Not in America. And so drug companies lobbied to ban CFC inhalers in favor of HFC inhalers, hydrofluorocarbon inhalers. And the FDA granted the exclusive rights to just a couple pharmaceutical companies to make this medicine. And as a result, the price of this medication of HFC inhalers went up to $50 to $100 per inhaler, depending on the brand and whatnot. Because hey, we got to protect the ozone layer, so we need to drive up the cost of medication. This is the FDA. This is FDA policy, folks. Consumer protection by the FDA, creating monopolies in pharmaceuticals. There's also this practice called evergreening. So basically, it's really hard to get new drugs and new medications approved by the FDA. It costs tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and takes years of research and development and testing and getting through the regulatory hoops. Between 1989 and I think 2002, I think 75% of patents that were granted by the FDA were what are called evergreen patents. They're just essentially extensions on existing patents. Basically, what happens is when a patent in medicine is about to expire, drug companies want to maintain their stranglehold over the medication that they're producing. So what they'll do is that they'll resubmit the patent, but they'll slightly alter the drug, usually by changing the coating on the pill or how the or the capsule, or slightly adjust the chemicals in the medication, and then they'll get the patent on that medication while their former patent expires. So you might be asking, well, why don't generic companies just produce the medicine on the expired patents now that it's pretty much free and anyone can do it? Why don't they just, compete with them by producing the old medications? And they have every right to do so. The problem is that these big pharmaceutical companies will tell the doctors, the hospitals, and the care providers that, those old drugs that generics are producing, those are outdated. Those are no good anymore. Our new drug, this is the real deal. So you want to prescribe your patients with these newer drugs, with these new patents, because those other ones, they're out of date. You don't want to be prescribing those, which end up de-incentivizing companies from producing the medication, because if doctors aren't going to prescribe it, why produce the medication in the first place? Which allows these pharmaceutical companies to keep a monopoly over their expired patents. So yeah, the FDA is responsible for causing the price of drugs to skyrocket. This is automatic level, it looks like. But and this is a point that's echoed in Catastrophic Care as well as Overcharged, is the fact that the prevalence of third-party payers, whether it's private insurance or government through Medicare or other subsidies, really distorts the entire healthcare and health insurance industry, because most people aren't really paying directly for their care. It's always third parties, and as a result, hospitals tend to overcharge because either some rich corporation or the government's just going to pay for it without thinking about it, or they're going to get a call from an insurance company or a lawyer to haggle down the price of or the cost of the care. Think about it. Like, whenever you go to buy something, whether it's food, groceries, a new video game console, flooring for your house, buying a new house, buying anything, usually you can go to a store, and the store, if you ask them how much their goods or service costs, they'll be able to tell you. First of all, there's a lot of competition, but you can shop around and people can tell you honestly what the cost of their service is going to be. What the crap? There we go. That's not, and so you can compare, you know what the cost is, you know if you have enough money. Because you're paying with your money. You're not relying on a third party to cover the cost for you. When it comes to healthcare and health insurance, no one knows what anything costs. If you go to a doctor, a hospital, a clinic, go to the doctor, you say, hey, how much is how much is my appointment going to cost today? They're like, well, we don't know. You might have to run tests, and we don't know what your insurance covers and all that stuff. So we can't tell you. We're not going to know until we check you out. And a lot of times they'll take your insurance and they'll go through your insurance, and then like 2 months later, you'll get a bill from your insurance saying, oh, hey, we only covered like $45 worth of the care. You got to cover the rest. And you get a bill for like $350. That happened to me recently. I started getting lumps on my neck. Nothing serious. But I ended up paying like $1,500 out of pocket. I had to see 2 different doctors. I had to go to an imaging place to get a CAT scan. And I never knew what I was paying because often they would take my insurance, and a lot of times, I would think, hey, my insurance is probably covering this, and then 2 weeks later I get a bill from my insurance company saying, hey, we paid $80 for this part of the service, but you got to pay the other $250. No matter where I went, oh, we don't know how much it costs. We don't know what kind of tests you're going to need today. We don't know what your insurance covers. And by the way, my case is very sounds like heaven to probably most people who have healthcare and insurance nightmares in America. People are probably sicker and probably had more headaches with doctors and hospitals and insurance companies and crap. So I'm not complaining. I'm just giving anecdotal evidence as to how healthcare and insurance works and why it's so expensive. No one knows the cost of anything. And even with Medicare and Medicaid, I forget what the exact stat is. I'll try to find it right now. But it said like the first year after Medicare was passed in 1968, 69, that it created a lot more demand in the healthcare industry, and as a result, prices skyrocketed. Let's see here. Overcharged and Catastrophic Care. Catastrophic Care is by David Goldhill. Overcharged is by David Hyman. But there was also, after Medicare and Medicaid expanded in the mid-2000s, a lot of hospitals started charging for unnecessary procedures because they knew the government was going to pay for it. They started a practice what is called upcoding, where they would bill government and Medicare they would essentially overcharge them for procedures. Classifying bills under more expensive charges. And I think a lot of these hospitals ended up getting busted in various investigations, but at the time they just paid for it because Medicare doesn't know how sick people are. What are they going to do? Just run their own tests, run their own CAT scans, and do their own blood work to say, hey, your patient's not as sick as you said they were. They didn't need all that care that you're charging us for. No, they're just gonna pay for whatever the hospital says they need. So again, more subsidies and intervention often distort things, and make things more expensive because they create more demand where there wasn't demand before. A lot of instances of, especially with Medicare and insurance, a lot of care providers will say, "Oh, we should probably run an MRI or a CAT scan just to rule stuff out. This is preventative care." And then, if insurance or Medicare is paying for it, hey, the person receiving the CAT scan. Okay, I've had enough of these freaking ovals staring at me. Who invented these things? This is Leaps and Bounds. This is Discovery Zone. Mario's Discovery Zone. But yeah, if you're the patient and your doctor, the hospital says you need an MRI, you need a CAT scan, and the insurance company is going to pay for it, or the hospital is going to pay for it, what do you care? You're not paying for it. Especially if you're getting it covered by the government. You're not paying for that out of pocket. Doctor doesn't care because, hey, they're going to get paid either way. And so they'll overcharge, often because they expect someone to negotiate it down. Son of a... Guess it doesn't matter, I gotta climb this vine. Yeah, later loser. Always find the path of least resistance, folks. Yeah, helmet time. So yeah, all these stories about the FDA creating monopolies and upcoding and... this is stuff you don't really hear on The Young Turks and Secular Talk and all these other socialist, hip internet tabloids, the SHITs, as I like to call them.